How are we? How are we? You all right? How are we? So, I got. Let me get centered. Oh, it's not correct. There's too much above my head. Bit anally retentive, that, isn't it? Fucking anally fucking something. So I got a week ban from YouTube, but I can't even tell you what for. That's how bad the oppression and the suppression is. I can't even describe to you why, because I've been warned that they will delete the whole channel. I contested it, and they said no. We've had humans review the decision, and if you bring this up again, you're doomed. So I won't discuss it here. If you want to know what happened, why I got banned, and you want to see the interview that I did that got me banned for a week, so now I have an active strike on my channel for a week. I sound a bit more Scouse the longer I spend up here. If you want to know why I got a strike for a week on my channel, then join my Telegram. That's in the more information bar below, because I'm really going to have to clean this channel up. It's going to have to be squeaky clean. The philosophy channel is going to have to be squeaky clean as well, because freedom isn't free. We no longer live in a modern Western liberal democracy. You can forget that wank fantasy. That fantasy's finished. Mop yourself down with a towel, move on with your life. Wipe away the shame. It's done. So I have seminars coming up. I have seminars coming up, and you will attend them if you can. Seminars coming up. We're going to film them as well, and we'll release clips from them. But your best bet, if you can attend and you want to experience the real vibrant atmosphere of a hardcore seminar face to face with me, I'm just looking you in the eye. You got CPTSD, have you? No, you don't. No, you don't. You're healed. And you go, I actually feel better. Wow, he must have done some neurolinguistic programming hypnosis thing on me. I feel better. That's right, you do. You do, don't you? You feel better, don't you? You do. You do. And people just be like, oh my God, I'm healed. praise Jesus. They'll be flopping around on the floor. So if you want to come, do so. On the 11th, all of these are booked through Eventbrite because it's easier for me to keep a track. I'll warn you, right? I'm going to warn you once. The one on the 11th, which is this Friday, is at the Liverpool Science Park. If you want to come, I announced it 20 minutes ago, and I think a quarter of the tickets have already gone. So if you are serious about going to Liverpool, you want to get that booked probably before Monday midday. I have to hold some tickets back for my mates. I don't want to stuff the room full. It doesn't seem to be sensible to me to do that. Because of just because of the season and everything else, I'm not stuffing the room. And so, yeah, that's at Liverpool Science Park. And the time, which I know because I'm the organizer, is 6 until 8. 6 until 8. So that's this Friday, the 11th. And then we're doing some seminars in Serbia. I'll do one in London on Thursday, the 18th. If you want to know more about that, because I haven't got a venue yet, join the Telegram group. The people on Telegram group get first dibs on everything before everybody else does. That's London, the 18th. Then Serbia, Belgrade, Radisson Hotel, Old Mill Radisson, not the other Radisson, the Old Mill in Belgrade. We're going Serbia, right? And that will be on the 23rd and the 24th. And then on Saturday, the 27th. More details in the more information bar that is below this video. And now we will answer questions. We being me and my many, many multiple personalities. Sandra Waddick says, please come to Dublin. Listen, if I could just stop you there, Sandra. I just sent out an email. Please do not fill my inbox with requests for places you want me to go to. Can you please just come to my house and do it at mine? And while you're here, could you do the dishes and the washing? No. You come to where I am. Let the mountain come to my heart. What's the question we're asking now? Here's a question, says Jilly Mac. How do I avoid damaging my own kids with the programming I've yet to clean up the files on? I'm not sure that you can avoid damaging your children. Even the purest and besterest of us will damage our children to some degree and in some way. And I think you just have to accept that. Being damaged by your parents is probably just a natural part of growing up. So we don't have an ideal of perfect parents, we have an ideal of good enough parents. So you minimize the damage. If you have programming that needs to be reset, you should probably seek face-to-face counseling. When I say face-to-face counseling, by the way, I mean not a course. I don't mean you need to be breathing the other person's air. You can go far with Zoom and Skype calls. Phone calls, not so much, but Zoom calls and Skype calls. So if you can find a therapist who specializes in what you do, who's in the right price range for you, and you have rapport with, then I suggest you get to that as quickly as possible. Tovi Tuti says, I would have loved to have come to Liverpool on the 12th, but it's too short notice for work. Curses. Catch it next time, maybe. Maybe you will. Maybe you won't. Maybe this is all there is, man. I'm just kidding. It's not. I'll do more. I didn't expect the Liverpool seminar to be selling as fast as it is. There will be a London one, as I say, on the 18th, which is the Thursday, I hope, because happily, on the 19th, happy to report, I will be being interviewed by Konstantin and Francis of Trigonometry. That won't be released on the 19th, but that's when I'm being interviewed, is on the 19th, is by Trigonometry, which I'm really pleased about, really looking forward to. Jessica asks, question. She's letting me know it's a question. She won't let the question mark speak for itself. She wants me to know. Question. How do we live in a world where people prey on others? The way you've done it up until now is probably all right, you know. How do we keep the hope, especially after so much trauma? How should I answer you? I mean, this is it's like a philosophical question. So what elements of sophistry will I pull out of my rectal cavity? I would say to you, let me just think of something that I think would be helpful, because I like to give people something that's helpful. And usually to give somebody something that's helpful, you need to give somebody like a bone to chew on, that they go away and they chew on it mentally, and then it gets absorbed with their own thoughts, and then it becomes their own idea. Because if I'm just like, we'll do this, this, and this, 3 steps, as grateful as you will be, the chances are really high, like 90% and up, that you'll just never do anything with it. So you need the Zen koan, you need the parable, you need the riddle to sort of take away. So then you go off with it and then you integrate it, you slow digest it. So here's one for you. What does it profit us to play the role of a beautiful soul in a corrupt world? Are we not also corrupt? Can we not see the corruption in our own selves? Your lust for the last Jaffa cake, is it not reflected in the politician's lust to take more than what he or she is due? Does it not come from the same place? What does it profit us to play the role of a morally pure martyr? Yes, the world is dirty and corrupt. Will we wake up every day in shock? A fresh shock? A fresh clutching of pearls? In a way, isn't this masturbatory? Aren't we just sort of in a ritual, like a daily cleansing ritual? It's not me, it's them. Yes, the world is the way it is. Yes, the world is imperfect. In some ways, it operates like a hellscape. Nothing's changed, and you have been operating in it. So, does this little ritual or ceremony that we're engaged in, we've all done it, I've done it, you're doing it, loads of people here do it, the people who walk around telling everybody, I'm an empath, you know, they're doing it. What purpose does it serve? How does it comfort us? And do we need comforting? Do we need comforting? You use that word, you use the word hope. Nietzsche said, hope really is the worst of all things. because it prolongs the suffering of men. The antidote to hope that prolongs the suffering is Kierkegaard's despair. See how awful everything is. Do you get it? Like, you can sort of push it off. You'd be like, it's not really thinking. It's more like, it's not really philosophy that you're engaged in. It's ideology. It's which is defense. It's a defense mechanism. You're like, oh, I can slipstream it over there because that's not me. But it is you. And the world really is awful. And in saying what you've said, here we go, we'll quote another or reference another philosopher. You're doing a very Zizekian thing. You're paying the toll to reduce your guilt, but you're doing nothing. You buy the Starbucks and £2 goes to the stupid Guatemalan children or what? But you've done nothing. You just feel better. You do your recycling, but nothing changes. You've done nothing except a symbolic gesture, and you've paid. We don't just pay to drink the coffee. We pay a penance out of the guilt of, as he would have it, like ultra exploitative, predatory capitalism. So be careful. Be careful. We are this world, and this world is us. We are not separate. We're not better than it. We're not superior to it in that sense. And sometimes it's better to let go of hope. Hope will keep you immature. It will keep you stuck. It will keep you in stasis. Despair can lead to grief and can lead to a real letting go. And only with a true letting go and with true sacrifice can we move forward. There you go. Told you I'd pull some sophistry out. Trauma after narcissistic abuse, says Habib. Hello, Habibi. Trauma after narcissistic abuse from a covert narcissist is probably the hardest thing I've ever experienced. 2 months on and I'm still, and then it cut off. Well, there is an overlap between vulnerable narcissism and borderline personality disorder in the literature. And yes, it's very, very difficult because you'll find it extremely emotionally dysregulating. PTSD is something that everybody, in my humble opinion, needs to take another look at. We should be talking about PTSD more. We go round and round the houses with narcissism, a little bit about, well, we need to talk about borderlines more. We need to be distinguishing between a grandiose and a vulnerable narcissist, because to you, as the recipient, the experience is significantly different and the damage is significantly different. And we must understand PTSD, not, yes, narcissism, yes, borderline, yes, CPTSD, but let's go back. Let's make this simple again. PTSD, and before PTSD, what did we call it? Shell shock. Let's talk about that. And you will have an understanding of what your partner has gone through and now what they're putting you through. And there is such a thing as secondary and tertiary trauma, secondary and tertiary PTSD, which means that trauma is contagious. Emotional dysregulation is contagious, which is why it's so hard. Bonnie lassie, will ye gang and share with me the hail day lang? Love will join us as we gang to join yon band of shearers. It's very deep, very meaningful Scottish song. The best version is by the Clydesiders, and it's called Band of Shearers. Beautiful Scottish folk song, redolent with meaning. What do you, Yellow Icicle? That's a good name. Don't lick the yellow icicle. What do you think about ADHD being caused by trauma, like Gabor Mate suggests? Absolutely. You'll find me in the trauma camp before you'll find me in the genetics camp. 95% of the time. I think a lot of these are learned behaviors, learned in the way that psychology uses the term learned, not innate, from external to internal rather than from internal to external, exogenous rather than endogenous. So ADHD is a perfect example of that. I usually prefer to call it adrenophilia. I won't bore everybody who follows me with my continual repetition of the story of meeting the man outside my house who was putting his bins out when I was putting the bins out as well, finding out that he was a psychologist and so on and so forth. His idea, the man with the bins, I never got his name. We just talked for a little bit, and he called it adrenophilia. He said it's probably a better way of thinking about it. So we're addicted to our own adrenaline. But the good part of it, of the name attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, is the attention deficit part. But that's not a description of a symptom. This is me. This is Richard. This is not mainstream. This is my opinion. It's a description of how the child was let down. They were not shown enough attention. Their parents were disinterested or drunk or narcissistic or on drugs or really depressed or full of grief or traumatized or in another physical space or something. So the child didn't get enough attention. So it's actually correct. It's actually useful, but it describes causation. It describes the causation rather than the symptom. AD, the AD of ADHD. The hyperactivity disorder is, adrenophilia. So I would split it. The AD and the HD, cause and effect. The AD is the attention deficit, not of the child or the person, but the attention deficit of the people around the child or the person. So if you're in an environment where nobody's showing you any attention, you're going to act the fool. You're going to act up. Even as an adult, you're going to do it. We're all acting out more now. And then we ignore the people around us and cause them to act out as well. In the case of the child, they were not showing enough attention. Typically, not always. There could be genetic factors in some of the behavioral stuff and drugs, contact with drugs, exposure to drugs. Sometimes when the mother is using certain drugs in utero, it can create a lot of problems with the ability to concentrate in the child when they're born. But then often it's because their IQ isn't particularly high, so they can't concentrate. They do not have the hardware to be able to concentrate. But that's the minority. The overwhelming majority of cases of ADHD are just helicopter parents who've declared their children have ADHD, or teachers who've declared the child has ADHD. Did you know that? The overwhelming majority of people walking around with the ADHD diagnosis didn't get it from a doctor, didn't get it from a clinician. They either gave it to themselves or somebody gave it to them. Amazing. Just amazing. Just amazing. That's a psychologized culture for you, though. So the AD is a description of what the environment or the parents let their child down with, and a deficit of attention. And the HD, the hyperactivity disorder, is now an addiction, an addictive cycling through adrenaline. What can I do to get a surge of adrenaline? I don't know, play like a really loud video game and blast some ratchet trap music, watch Netflix and scroll TikTok at the same time, do something naughty in public that sets people off, expose myself, like physically be an exhibitionist, swear loudly, tell awful stories, put terrible images into people's minds. This is the adrenophilia. We become boundary breakers. So it can look like narcissism. It can look like borderline personality disorder as well. But what is it? It's a desperate attempt to be looked at. Please look at me. Please look at me. Please look at me. I will bully you to look at me, because that's the only way I've ever been looked at, was like a sawn-off shotgun to the knee. So when some people are acting like a complete clown, it is because they don't know any other way. Literally, they have never experienced attention through any other modality, from childhood through to adulthood, and they're assholes. They're a pain in the arse. And you'll think this person has a personality disorder, this person has borderline, or they're a narcissist or histrionic, especially the exhibitionist, constantly getting naked, constantly getting their ass out, constantly, and you'll think, what the hell? What's going on with this person? They're addicted to adrenaline. They've no idea. They've no idea. Their dopamine levels are set so low that unless they're doing something wild, they feel empty, numb, and almost non-existent. So yes, it's caused by trauma, but not all trauma is loud and visible. Some trauma is like, so some trauma is yang. You can see it, you can hear it, it creates bruises. And some trauma is yin. It's the withdrawal and the silence that can traumatize children as well. And people, adults are traumatized by it. Habib says, thank you. Thank you, Habibi. Okay. Reese says, I done get my derriere out. Why you got your derriere out? Okay. Can someone have CPTSD and have borderline co-occurring? Let us be clear, my friends. Borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder are all manifestations of trauma. They're all a response to trauma. They're all post-traumatic stress responses, and they are all complex post-traumatic stress responses. All of them. The issue with borderline and CPTSD is that many people with CPTSD are misdiagnosed as borderline, particularly women. That's a whole hour-long lecture that would drive you to suicidal ideation by minute 41. We could get into it if people are interested in it. I like the subject, but it's sort of like it's a bit like talking shop, because you have to talk about like the industry of psychotherapy. And I'm not even talking about pharmaceuticals. I'm talking about the business of psychoanalysis and psychotherapy and counseling and social constructs and everything else. But yeah, particularly women. Most BPD diagnosed women that I've met did not have BPD. The men that I met that had been diagnosed with BPD did have BPD. Why would that be? Now why would that be? The women typically just had either PTSD or CPTSD. Subject for another day. Veal says, Pete Walker says if they can feel real remorse, it's not BPD. BPD is a controversial diagnosis, and it probably will be gone within the next 10 years. I don't think it can survive in the modern world. If you look at the history of the diagnosis of BPD, it's the very term borderline is out of date. It's the border between neurosis and psychosis. That's what a borderline person is. So you've got people who are not anywhere near psychotic with the diagnosis of BPD because of the way it is detected and diagnosed. So a lot of people with BPD who then recover from BPD never have really had borderline personality disorder. They were emotionally dysregulated and they had CPTSD. CPTSD is not recognized by the DSM. And so your insurance does not cover it. Okay, if you're going to ask questions, can you make them one sentence long and have them end in a question mark? Testacle asks, what do you think of the red pill men? Well, you're talking about a huge community that isn't homogenous, which we know because they're continually in arguments amongst themselves. So there's a lot of different ideas and ideologies within the red pill community. I think it's interesting. I keep an eye on it, but it's not something that I make a priority day to day. Jason Bradley asks, can you speak to how pain can also be transformative? Positively or negatively transformative? Pain can drive people completely insane. Pain can make people inordinately bitter. Pain can also push people to better themselves. Pain can make you bitter or pain can make you better. There's a meme. There's a little quote for Instagram. Pain could make you bitter or pain could make you better. Your choice. Read that again. It fucking drives me crazy when those quotes say that on Instagram. I don't know who needs to hear this. Nobody. Piss off. And then at the end it says, read that again. You read it again. You fucking read it again. Yeah, it can be transformative. Absolutely. It can make you a better person or a worse person. Yeah. See this. Bom dia, signor Richard. Ottimo. O melhor bolo do mundo. I can't talk about that. My channel it runs the risk of being deleted if I even say these words. Jane says box ticking scales is never a good idea. It's terribly old-fashioned. It won't last. It won't last. Okay, if you could make these one sentence long and end in a question mark, that would help me. Do you think owning pets, especially dogs, which seem to be perpetually dependent, exhibits traits of codependency? This question feels like a trap. What do you want me to say? That everybody who has a dog has a mental illness? I hear you, though. I hear you. It's an interesting question. But you know, I'm going to leave that one alone. If emotional deregulation is contagious, could emotional regulation be as well? Absolutely. That's why you like watching my videos, when we talk about really horrible, dark things that normally frighten you. And then we insert jokes about willies, and we talk about Star Wars and other dumb films. Not dumb films, Star Wars is not a dumb film. Well, the new Star Wars, that's all shit. Garbage. The real Star Wars movies, they were not dumb. That was some real shit, man. Then yeah, it can be contagious. Your state transmits. That's what they would teach you on a neurolinguistic programming course. That's what they would teach you on a good hypnotherapy course. Like, if I want you to be calm and to pay attention and to focus, I have to go into a state of calm, attentive focus. Or if I want you to have a sense of humor in the face of something that frightens you, then I should have a sense of humor. I should make you laugh in the face of the thing that frightens you. So yeah, our emotional states are contagious, 100%. Steve-O, can exposure to love bombing from religious sects? This is where love bombing comes from, by the way. It doesn't come from narcissism. The term love bombing comes from the American and Canadian fields of studying cults and helping people to deprogram from cults. So before we had the idea that narcissists use love bombing, it absolutely was considered a key element of cult programming. So if you have been love bombed and then shunned as a non-convert, yeah, would it cause CPTSD? It would be traumatic, and it could take a long time to overcome the pain. I'm reluctant to say it would cause CPTSD unless you were locked in the cult physically and felt you couldn't leave. See, you're talking as an adult, I presume, because you would have specified child otherwise. So you have to not be able to leave, and they have to be quite dangerous. So it would have to be like an armed cult somewhere, you know, some pretty dangerous cult where you felt like leaving could potentially get you hurt or people you loved hurt. It needs to be life or death, and you need to not be able to leave. So it would possibly trigger pre-existing CPTSD, possibly, or it's just been very, very traumatic for you. It's just been very, very traumatic. Or you were kept in the cult environment for months and months and months on end, and it was extremely emotionally intense and extremely emotionally distressing, to the point where even if nobody put a gun to your head, you felt existential dread, maybe through heartache or maybe through something else. Then yes, that would cause CPTSD. You've either got to be a kid trapped in an abusive home or a political prisoner experiencing, you know, abuse from people who can just choose to stop feeding you tomorrow or take you outside and shoot you tomorrow. It needs to be that, and you need to not be able to physically escape. So the conditions have to be quite intense, but you may have experienced that. I don't know. must be quite annoying. Sorry. There seems to be a huge link between childhood abuse, mental health knock-on effects, and crime in the prison system. Yet there seems to be little help regarding that. Would you agree? Yeah, the first job I ever did, I was very lucky, that was related to psychology. Most people who get psychology degrees never get to work with a degree. Was working for the probation service in Runcorn. And the criminals I was dealing with, well, they had me doing courses and seminars for them. I was too young for it. I didn't really know. I was only about 22 or 23. And they had me in like roomfuls of crackheads and, people covered in scabs. Really, really, really mentally very, very sick people, either through the experience of being practically homeless or effectively homeless and drug addicts, or they were already very traumatized, and that's what led to them being homeless and drug addicts and criminals. And I saw it very, very clearly. Shut up, you. I saw it very, very clearly that they're extremely mentally ill. And yes, everybody knew that. Everybody. It was a stupid thing to say. Like if I said, "Oh, do you know that like these drug addicts you've got me working with, they're actually quite traumatized. Some of them were experienced like childhood sexual abuse, and the older heads who've been working in that environment, like social workers and probation. I wasn't a probation officer. I worked for the probation service. Don't get it twisted. I wasn't a probation officer, but I worked with probation officers and social workers and representatives from the CPS. And if I said that to them and fed that data back up, they looked at me like I'd said, "Did you know that water is wet and the sky is blue?" They were like, "Yeah." So yeah, when I was younger, I was like, why don't we do something about that? Why isn't there isn't this a bit weird? And I think that in time and with progress, quote unquote, as things move forward, we will look back on these times as primitive, as brutal, in the way that we look back on medieval times that way. It was just Guy Fawkes night, or whatever you call it, bonfire night. Yeah, Guy Fawkes night here in the UK. And I went back and just for funsies, I was like, "Oh, why do we do this again?" And I read the whole Guy Fawkes story and like the history of how we used to punish people, like, and it was crazy. It was just insane. The things that we would do. I don't know if you know, like, did you know that with Guy Fawkes, apart from the fact that they almost certainly, we don't know for sure, but they almost certainly racked him, put him on the rack, which you can look up descriptions of what that does to a human body. It's the most awful torture. He had to be carried to the gallows where he was going to be hung until he was half dead. His parts cut off and burnt in front of him, and the co-conspirators as well, and then disemboweled while still alive, strapped to a ladder. They would strap him to a ladder to do this. It's really weird. And then the executioner would climb halfway up the ladder and do this stuff to them. And it was like you're dragged backwards because your head is where your arse should be. So the thing that you did is really stupid. That's why you would be drawn. You'd be dragged backwards. Your head's where your arse should be. It's in the earth. It's in the mud, in the excrement. And that's what they would throw on you before you were hung until you were half dead. Then you had your parts cut off. And burned before your eyes. That's specific to the instructions for the executioner. Make sure he can see, like, that his bits are being barbecued. So that you know that this is the end of your issuance, of your bloodline, of everything. This is the end of everything for you. It's not enough to be mutilated and hacked to pieces. It's all of it is symbolic. It's a symbolic total destruction of who you are, because people were much more attached in those days to what happened to their corpses. So the idea of the quartering, having your arms and legs and head cut off, and then they were sent in different directions, would be much more distressing to people back then. Like now, we'd just be like, well, I'm dead, so I don't care. Harvest my organs if you want to. But at that time, it was different. And you just look at that was the law. That was what civilized people did to stop uncivilized people. And that's part of the penal system. It's punitive. It's a penal system. It's punishment. I really think that we'll look back on this and just say this is absolutely barbaric. But at the same time, I don't know what choice we have. I really don't. I would hate to be in the position of a judge. I'd hate to be in the position of a government. I don't know what I would do with people. And don't think like, oh, he's in psychology and he's left-leaning. He'll probably just forgive them because they got childhood trauma. I'd be way more likely to execute people. Way more likely. I think it's much kinder to give people a quick, painless death and just be like, well, that one didn't work, let's start again, than to have somebody rot in a prison system for like, once you get past 15 years, you're not even punishing the same person anymore. It's really, I think it's barbaric. I think it's absolutely barbaric to keep people that long inside of prison. But I'm not kind. I'm not a bleeding heart. I would say if somebody's that bad that you're seriously considering locking them in a cell for longer than 15 years, we should probably have the guts as a society to say, we really have given up hope on this person and we should execute them as quickly and painlessly. Just get rid of them. So yeah, it is bad, but I don't know what the solution is. Like, we don't have the technology for that. But yes, we are putting people in prison who mostly are victims, and they're mostly traumatized people. This is beyond, that's not my opinion, that's beyond doubt. The research is out there. And more often than not, when it's violent crimes, alcohol was involved. I'm not against drinking. I'm not an anti-alcohol person, but that's a legal drug. That's a taxable drug that causes death and violence on a huge scale in allegedly civilized countries all across the globe. But drugs are bad and violence is bad. But we sell people a drug and make money from it, and we know it causes violence. I don't think there is another drug that disinhibits violence like alcohol. Maybe PCP. What a comparison. I'd have to say, like, well, is there a drug that disinhibits people to create violence as much as alcohol does? Yeah, PCP. It's a hell of a jump up. You can't tell me cocaine does it. Cocaine with alcohol will create violence. Speed with alcohol will create violence. Cocaine on its own won't make people violent at all. It'll make them chatty. So we have a lot of hypocrisies. We have many, many hypocrisies, and it will be looked back on as a barbaric time. The way we look back on Catholic plots against Protestant kings and the punishments thereof as being barbarous. Like, you know, that's, I would imagine we would all agree, I hope we would all agree, that it's hard to justify torturing somebody to death, or torturing somebody, then because they repaired Guy Fawkes. That's crazy. They sent a doctor in so that he could wait long enough to be tortured to death at his execution. And he had to be led to his execution on a chair. He couldn't walk to the gallows. He was carried on a specially made chair to get there, so that they could then continue to desecrate his body. And I'm like, that's, wow. Like, and the people who did the torture could only be noblemen. Noblemen oversaw the torture. That was absolutely standard in England. In the Tower of London, when people were being tortured, they were not being tortured by thugs. Maybe some brute like would pull the wheel or use the hammer or whatever, but they were oversaw by the nobility. And they had this weird sense of civility about torture and mutilation. So even in Guy Fawkes's case, it was King Charles I said, an amazing turn of phrase. Use the gentlest tortures first. He said with Guy Fawkes, use the gentlest tortures first. Okay, English has changed its meaning and it doesn't mean quite what it would mean today, but it basically means, you know, try just using the thumb screw on him first. Try just putting him in like awkward positions first, or crushing his feet first before you rack him, before you actually start snapping his ligaments and his bones. And there's a carryover here. I think we try to hold a double standard, and we're squeamish. And our squeamishness about actually executing justice creates an awful lot more pain, and it's extremely hypocritical. Like if you're at that point, you know, the person's probably lost, and you should just kill them quickly and painlessly. Thanks for your question. It's a big subject. Gently torture, says Yuji Rose. That's an oxymoron for you. Yeah. And that word gentle, it referred to the nobility as well. That's why we have gentlemen. If you're gentle, then you're nobility. So I'm like, well, what would the noblest tortures be? Would you tickle them with a quill? Give them too much snuff? Oh no, no more. You take this snuff. Eat more caviar, you rascal. Oh no, I'll talk, sir. No more caviar. I'm about to poop myself. Charlie Silverman says, I'm eating breakfast. Well, that sounds like a you problem. You know, you can just turn on something else. You could watch kittens yawning. Michael Kozowski says, Richie G, are you going to do workshops in the USA soon? I was going to. And let's go, Brandon. The Biden administration changed the rules. So only people who've been pokified can enter the country. And that doesn't include me. So I'm not allowed in. Let's go, Brandon. Django Apple says, gentle torture is what narcissists do. Yes, I suppose you could say that. I love these nutters. Sovereign Dirt says, all caps, how do you feel about being put into a box by a Freemason in the end? You mean my people? I am here as a Freemason, Illuminati, member of the Cabal, to infect your mind. We're at 636 viewers right now. It's going to turn into 666 followers in a few seconds. If I say the name Baphomet backwards, it'll be cut. I don't know what that means, Sovereign Dirt, but I hope you're having a good Sunday. So let's just remember, Paolo Adriao, do you want a refund? Anybody who didn't like this stream, just email the management at letsgobrandon.com with the subject title refund for Richard Grannon live stream. I'll just say, listen, I was very, it's got to be a sternly worded email. I was very disappointed with that live stream, and it was not appropriate. Signed, Karen or Kevin, whichever you prefer. Sovereign Dirt says, maybe the gentlest torture was code for take your time whilst we find the patsy. Maybe. It's not impossible. It's not impossible. Yeah. I mean, somebody had to go for it. Somebody had to go for it. And I do think there are situations where I can see it. Like, you must be able to see it. Imagine you're in that situation, and you know, somebody's gonna blow up the Houses of Parliament, or alleged to have blown up some terrible crime, some terrible crime, and you have to cover your ass. CYA, cover your ass. Of course, none of us would ever be in that situation because we're not narcissistic psychopaths and we wouldn't put ourselves there. But if you were, the temptation to find a patsy would be enormous. I mean, it solves a lot of problems, right? If you can find a scapegoat, problem solved. If you don't, well, do you want to be left carrying the can? There's some people writing some crazy stuff in the comments here. Bill Burkett says, I witnessed a real life Karen in the wild the other night. She was successfully calmed down like a Jurassic Park dinosaur being lassoed and tased. I would love to see that. I would love to see that. I had a run in with one last night. I was at a class of kizomba and I was dancing, and I've never done kizomba before. And so I wasn't very confident. Bachata's my thing, not kizomba. I didn't really get it. And the class ended and a social started. And a woman who I didn't like the look of from the moment she walked in the room. I don't have to explain to anybody why. I don't have to explain to her why. That was just my impression. And she asked me to dance. And I said no. And she's about 60, between 60 and 65. And I was sat down and she stood over me and she wagged her finger in my face and lectured me on the etiquette of Latin dancing. I grew up in Portugal. I've lived in Spain. I've been to the Dominican Republic and danced bachata on and off now for the last 6 years. I do not need a lecture on the correct etiquette for how we ask each other to dance in Latin dancing. And she finished her little lecture and she said, so when you say no to me, that's very rude. So if I ask you to dance, you have to say yes. And I said, well, I'm not going to say yes. And she said, well, then you're just a rude man. And I said, I'm very comfortable with the idea of you thinking of me as a rude man. She had nothing. She just bumbled off. I'm not going to be bullied into dancing with somebody. I don't want to dance with you. Kizomba is like, it's chest to chest. If I don't like your vibe, I'm not spending 3 minutes breathing your fucking air. Creep. There's just no way. No means no. No means no. You can cite the law from the Dominican Republic of 1946. I am not dancing with somebody I don't want to dance with. Okay. YouTuber says, we don't negotiate with terrorists. Absolutely not. You know, dance with me or else I'll brand you rude. I'm like, you seriously think I care about your opinion of me? What a massive ego. I've never seen you before in my life and I hope I never see you again. Please think of me as a rude, ill-educated man. If that's the payment, if that's the toll I have to pay to not be pressed up against you for 3 minutes, I'm good. I'm good with that. So remember, we have seminars coming up in Belgrade in Serbia. The information on those seminars is in the more info bar below. There's one in Liverpool this Friday, the 11th coming. As I said, those tickets are going quickly. So if you really want to come, you should think about buying before tomorrow midday. The last time I looked before I started the stream 50 minutes ago, a quarter of the tickets had already gone and they'd only been up for 15, 20 minutes. Plus I have to keep seats back for my mates and other people who are going to come along. We're not packing the room out. I'm just not doing that. London will be on the 18th of this month, and I haven't got a venue for that yet, but it'll probably be at like between 7 and 9 somewhere in central London, and hopefully we'll go. It'll be near to where the salsa club is. The salsa club is just called Salsa ! And they have socials on a Thursday. So any of you come to that or are into dancing, we'll go do social afterwards. Okay, I'll take one more question and then we'll call it a wrap. Naughty Mom says, come to Encinitas, lol. Let's go Brandon, lol. If you see me in America, You'll know. You'll know I came in from down south, from south of Mexico. I'd be like, I thought you said you couldn't come into the country. I'd be like, what? What country? I'm not here. Who are you? The link is saying page not found. That is disturbing. Is that wacky tobacco? No, I don't need that. I do not need that. Ever read 1,000 Plateaus plus Anti-Oedipus? Would you like a drink, Rich? Yes, I'm going to the Swinging Arm right now for a drink. It's an amazing bar in Birkenhead. It's a biker bar. And I'm going to dress like this for the irony. I love it. Actually, I have followers in there. I have people who follow me. So sometimes when I go into this biker bar, like some hairy dude with a beard walk up to me and go, "Are you Richard Crannan?" I was like, "Yeah, I am. I very much enjoyed your videos." But yeah, that sound. Even bikers get the blues. That sounds like a good name for a blues song. It might even already exist. Last question. Do you believe that romantic love is possible before self-love and self-healing? Oh, no. Oh, you asked the wrong man. No, you don't want to ask me about romantic love. I would probably be for saying that we should let go. We would lose something if we let go of romantic love. But I personally believe we would gain so much more if we let go of romance. You should know that the root, the etymological word for romance and romantic means false. It means fantasy-based. And I don't think it serves anybody, really, not for stable attachment. I think it's what would Gadsard call it? You could call it a mind virus, but he has a pompous way of saying it that's really cool. He calls it like well, he wrote a whole book called The Parasitic Mind, but he calls it like I think he says psychological pathogen or mental pathogen. So I'd say pathogen because it sounds like a little bit more intellectual. So romance is a pathogen. It's a mental pathogen, and it hasn't helped us. I believe it encourages a sort of rigid individualism and a consumerism that borders on narcissism. It's very hard to be romantically in love without falling into the realms of narcissistic indulgence. And most people in love go mad to some degree in a way that mirrors borderline personality disorder, because they become emotionally dysregulated and because they become terrified of losing their partner. So there isn't like, you say like, oh, that person's jealous, that person isn't, that person has an attachment disorder, that person doesn't. Everybody in love is insane with jealousy and develops effectively temporary attachment disorder. So I'm not for it. I'm not for that at all. Self-love, self-healing is good. I would say like we probably could do with spreading our love around. That sounds gross. I mean, our appreciation, our respect, our enjoyment of our care, our affection, our lovingness for more than one person. I really think that's quite sick, and it's not natural. It's not what we're evolved to. We're evolved for bonding with groups, and now we're also atomized and desperate for bonding. We end up bonding with one person. So we have like all this bondingness, like a pool full of balls. What the fuck? You know those ball pools you can jump in? So we have, it's supposed to go to like 15 different people, and maybe some more of those balls are supposed to go to one, but now they're all on one person. You're putting your balls on that person. I'm going to stop now. This did not go well. We're putting too much on one person, and it's sick. And you hear, like I hear all the time, are you reading The Brothers Karamazov? I finished that months ago. What are you talking about? I finished that in June, I think. When I look at it from a certain perspective, I'm amazed that any relationships survive. And my secret suspicion is that no relationship survives the romance. In that, the two people who get into the romantic relationship, they must die as they are, and die in the view of the romantic relationship, and they almost have to transcend romance. If they stay together and they continue loving each other, it's because they healed from the fever dream. They healed from the fever dream, and they do stick together. But why should we go through the fever dream? You know, pair bonding is going to be an intense experience enough without layering extra levels of ideology on top of it. But you're going to experience romantic impulses, even if we lived in a culture that didn't idolize and deify romance like that. So, told you asked the wrong person. I'm not for it. 670 people. We surpassed the number of the beast. It is now over. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. A ball pit. Thank you, Janine. Pool full of balls. A ball pit is what it's called. Don't put your balls, don't put all of your heavy balls on one person. And that's the thought I would like you to carry with you. Carry these balls with you, these heavy balls with you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and your attention. I hope that was useful, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Cheerio.